My
Hi everyone, welcome back to the next lecture of ecosystem. Yeah, in the previous lecture we talked about what are autotrophs, heterotrophs, what are herbivores, carnivores, right? We are also talked about what are the levels of consumers are there. For example, we talked about herbivores can only be the primary consumers because they directly feed on producers, and producers are the plant, of course. But then and carnivores can only be the secondary consumers. So secondary consumer or carnivores can also be the tertiary and quaternary consumers, but they cannot be the primary consumers. So now let's have a look here. You can see the forest ecosystem. I have given an example of that. So here you can see in forest there is plant, of course they are the producers. And then you can see the rabbit is the first level consumer, or you can say primary consumer. And then after that there is fox who feeds on rabbit, so they are the primary carnivore but secondary, second level consumer. And then above that is wolf is tertiary consumer but second level of carnivore, right? And then there is tiger is of course the tertiary consumer, quaternary consumer but tertiary level of carnivore. And this tiger in this forest ecosystem we can see is the top level consumer, which we also discussed in the last lecture, I guess. Now we'll talk about the saprotrophs. Saprotrophs are also called as decomposers or reducers. They break down the complex organic compounds or dead matter of plants and animals, and they just make it, or you can say convert all these dead decayed material into minerals or nutrients form. Right, so they have a very important role in an ecosystem to play. Right, so decomposers actually, they what they do, they just secrete some digestive enzymes externally into the dead decayed plant and animal materials. Whatever is left out is there, and then these enzymes which they secrete actually helps in decomposing the whatever the dead and decayed material is there. And then all decayed material get converted into the minerals. Minerals are the form of nutrients which actually taken up by the plants. I'm just trying to make you understand that these are the minerals actually which plants takes up as a raw material for photosynthesis. Being a producer, they produce food using these nutrients as a raw material, minerals, and using solar energy as a source of energy. So I think you can recall this fact, right? So now here decomposers are the one actually who bring back whatever the mineral nutrients after producing in an ecosystem. These producers do, they get into the whole ecosystem, and each and every biotic system have to have their life cycle, and after completion of their life cycle they get die. And these dead and decayed materials have to have get converted into the minerals, nutrients, etc. And these are the decomposers actually helps doing that, and that's why they are important. This process of decaying material, or you can say dead matter of plants and animals, is called decomposition. And whatever happens after that decompositions, minerals comes out and they get into the soil, and that the process is called mineralization, right? So they have a very important role. They released minerals and nutrients from dead and decayed matter to the soil. so that producers can take up again those mineral nutrients and make food again and make it available to the ecosystem, or you can say biotic uh, part of the ecosystem, because they are the one who need food. Now we will talk about the abiotic component of ecosystem. Abiotic components are of two types: physical component and chemical component. If we are talking about the physical component, then the physical components are like sunlight, intensity of solar flux, duration of sun hours, average temperature, annual rainfall, wind, latitude, altitude, what kind of soil type is there in a particular area, what is the water availability of that area. These are the physical factors actually influence a lot in any kind of ecosystem. And that is why, these are the physical factors actually which makes a difference, when we go to desert kind of area. For example, if we go to Thar, Rajasthan, if you go to Rajasthan, you can say there, the pattern of, temperature, precipitation is different. Solar flux hours are different. Similarly, if we will go to tropical rainforest kind of areas, there, again, the solar flux, temperature and precipitation is different. Similarly, in tundra ecosystem, if we get any chance to go there, you will also realize again that, how temperature, precipitation and solar flux is different there as well. So I think these are the abiotic factor, basically the physical factor, which affects a lot of kind of ecosystem there is. So after physical factor, now it's chemical factors. Now, chemical factors of an ecosystem, of course, could be like carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, hydrogen, oxygen, and sulfur, etc. Also, the levels of different toxic substances are whatever they are present in air, water, and soil. These are all comes under chemical factor. So I think these chemical factors influence a lot, ecosystem. And not only the ecosystem, we can say the functioning of the ecosystem, as we can understand. And we know as well, we heard a lot about, every next day we are reading about this in newspaper, like, carbon dioxide level is increasing, need to check out the level of carbon dioxide, need to bring down the level of carbon dioxide, particulate matter 2.5 PM10. So all these we are having a lot of information, we are going through it, and these all are kind of chemical factors which are affecting. How it's affecting, of course, we will study and know more about all these factors in our day-to-day life, in our ecosystem. But of course, here to make you understand, the thing is that, these chemical factors, not only the physical factors, but these chemical factors actually influence a lot the overall functioning of the ecosystem, because they affect soil, air, water directly. Let's have a look in next slide how they affect, how they help in functioning of an ecosystem. Well, when it's about function of an ecosystem, it means that it refers to all the services, processes, and interactions performed by the organisms in an ecosystem, right? So don't worry, it's the ecosystem is itself a very complex thing. What we need to do is that we will go one by one to understand the function of an ecosystem by understanding the energy cycles within an ecosystem, food chains or kinds of food chains, or how it works, how it happens, etc. in an ecosystem. We'll also try to understand the diversity interlinks between organisms, how they behave, how they connect with each other, how they become helpful, or you can say important, or you can say how they help each other to survive or coexist in a complex kind of in an ecosystem. Now we'll also try to understand the nutrient cycles, we sometimes also called as biogeochemical cycles. We will explain why this is called as biogeochemical cycles in next lectures. Of course, we will also try to understand that how this function of an ecosystem is related with evolution. But one thing, before getting into all these things one by one, I would like to make you clear that, whatever we are going to discuss, for example, energy cycle, food chains, etc., these are all under ecosystem, within an ecosystem. So don't get confused by, hearing all these terms, because whatever the terms here written we are going to study is basically related with biotic abiotic factors, which we have understood in earlier slides, and about physical factor and chemical factor of abiotic thing, and living things of biotic things. So it's related with that only, nothing much. Don't worry, we will understand very clearly in the coming slide all these concepts. Now we'll know about food chain. So what is food chain? Yeah, the food chain is basically the sequence of eating and being eaten in an ecosystem is known as food chain. Basically, it's a chain which represents a single pathway by which energy and matter flow through an ecosystem. Now, let me explain this clearly to you by showing this picture. I hope you can recall this picture. Here we were just studying this in the earlier slides, that this is a depiction of an ecosystem I showed you earlier. So you can see here, for example, in grassland ecosystem, if you can see here, grasses are there, and cow and deer is there, being in herbivores. So they are eating grasses. Tiger is there to eat cow or deer, any of them, because they are the herbivores. So you can see the chain, from producers to consumers. So producer is again the plants, and consumers are others who are dependent on the plants. So first, primary consumer is, of course, we had discussed a lot about all these things, that the cow or deer is the primary consumer, and tiger, who is basically the secondary consumer, but it depends on primary consumers, right? So because tiger cannot eat plants, so they can eat only because they are carnivores, right? So you can see here the chain, and whatever here in food chain we are discussing is basically related to this graph, right? So similarly, you can see in the marine ecosystem as well, that a chain is there, one is being eaten by others. So crocodile is there who is eating fish is there to eat zooplanktons are dependent on phytoplanktons, which are basically the producers. So same, so here food chain means this, and food chain is basically to is important because this is the pathway by which energy and matter flow through an ecosystem, right? So and you can understand what does this ecosystem mean here. Ecosystem is, of course, a biotic abiotic factor. When it combines together, it forms ecosystem. So in every kind of ecosystem, food chain must be there, because there are biotic factors, they are looking for food, so they will be dependent on something. So some will be herbivores, some will be the carnivores, but at the end, whatever the food chain is there, that the food chain basically represents the pathway by which energy and matter flow through an ecosystem. I think I have made this point clear, that what is the food chain means here.